Hi, this is Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today, I have with me Dr. Akhtar Badshah. He is the Chief Catalyst at Catalytic Innovators Group, where he advises organizations and individuals to catalyze their strategy focused on social and philanthropic investments. He also conducts purpose mindset leadership workshops with organizations to help individuals articulate their strengths and values and craft their purpose statement. A seasoned executive with over 30 years of experience in international development, managing a corporate philanthropic program, and co-founding a global nonprofit for social enterprise, Dr. Badshah led Microsoft's philanthropic efforts for 10 years, where he administered the company's community investment and employee contributions. Dr. Badshah recently published his latest book, Purpose Mindset: How Microsoft Inspires Its Employees and Alumni to Change the World. Welcome to the show, Dr. Badshah.
Thank you so very much, Andrea. I'm really excited to be on the show and looking forward to the conversation.
And those of you who are actually, some people are watching this interview, some people will listen to this interview, but those who are watching see in the background art. And this is your art. You're an artist. Tell us about that a little bit.
So I've always been a, artist. I'm an architect by training, so got some, insights into painting. And for me, art is very therapeutic. It allows me to express my own points of views using a different medium. I spend most of my time talking, some of my time writing, and then art is just another way in which I can express. And some of the paintings at the back, this one behind me is about world peace. It shows two faces and doves, which actually just shows the way in which collaboration and understanding can take place. On top of that is a face with a hand, which actually I did in May of 2020, just when we went into the lockdown and the pandemic, and it expresses anguish. And I've done a series of paintings around the pandemic after that.
You've had such interesting trajectory for your career. I mean, like you said, you started in architecture and were trained in architecture. Can you tell us a little bit about the trajectory, like the different things that you've done and how you got interested in Microsoft's philanthropic efforts?
So I'm not sure that, any young person listening to me that is seeking career advice should see my career as a way to fulfill your life's purpose and work. I obviously wanted to be an architect. I went into architecture, studied architecture, went to get my master's degree at MIT. And then just through sheer circumstances, the dean asked me to help him on a project that he was working on to start a new educational effort because, I was a student, I needed money, and from there, he asked me to join the program to teach. And that suddenly put me onto a whole different trajectory from going out and practicing architecture into teaching architecture, got my PhD. And then colleagues and friends that I was working with that were within the UN system had started an organization, which was a nonprofit focused on mega cities with Janice Perlman. And they asked me to join that effort. So I left my MIT, where I was teaching, and joined a startup NGO. And from there, I moved to Seattle because my wife was working for Microsoft before that. And Seattle started a new nonprofit focused on bridging the digital divide. And then Microsoft came calling and asked me to run their philanthropy, which I did. And I ran that for a decade. And now I'm back into teaching and consulting. So my trajectory has always been driven by opportunities that were provided to me. And I just took a chance and seized on it. And some have worked out incredibly well and some have not. And that's about it.
Oh, maybe that's not such bad advice.
And today, most of us kind of go into a particular line of work and we want to build a career there. I'm just saying, keep your mind open. Your education is going to allow you to do and apply it in different ways. And just because you're not trained in that subject matter doesn't necessarily mean you can't do it.
Hmm. And I would imagine that just, architecture, art, that there's some sort of you brought something different to your corporate work because you had that other background. I mean, do you see that? Do you feel like there's something that gave you that was important to what you did?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that once you kind of get yourself into a training where you're open to all sorts of new approaches, that just expands your horizon, right? It expands your horizon, and then that allows you to do other things. Architecture is one discipline where you're using both your right and left side of your brain, right? I mean, you've got to design and you've got to ensure that whatever you design actually does not fall down, right? I mean, you can't just have a blue death of, the blue dot of, on the screen that says I'm restarting, right? A computer crash is a very different thing versus a building crash. So you have a understanding of technology, you understand structures, you understand physics, but then you're also a designer where you understand color, art, movement, people. So it's a very different discipline that kind of gives you a all-rounded training, which most other disciplines don't give you.
Hmm. Color, art, movement, all those words made me think of just some of those key things that we want to achieve, like engagement, people
Yes.
buying into an idea. Like when you have that kind of artistic perspective, and you can see, I think that you probably see things that other people may not see, um, because you have that sense of movement and color and so on.
Yeah, and I think that we can all train ourselves to do that
Mm,
by being better observers, right? Seeing is not the only thing. I mean, at times our eyesight takes over everything, which then also actually becomes more judgmental and prejudicial because you actually see somebody and say, this person is tall, this person is short, this person is thin, fat, you know, brown, white, all sorts of things come in. But if you kind of keep our five senses and kind of allow us to observe through listening, through smelling, through tasting, through touching, you can get a very different sense of understanding of where we are in our world.
hmm.
That how much of us actually really focus on the ground that we walk on.
It sounds like being aware. It sounds like presence.
And I mean, again, it's not possible to be present all the time,
Sure.
right? But if we make the effort, then I think you're breaking down certain barriers because we will all have our own set of prejudices because it's just natural, right? It's natural. Likes and dislikes are natural things. But if you're a little bit more grounded, then we start becoming a little bit more accepting of others and new ideas. And that acceptance of others and new ideas then allows you to bring yourself into that. And it's just a matter of, are you welcoming or are you going to be cautious? And some of us are cautious as people, and some of us are more risk takers. And we just have to kind of straddle that balance in a effective way.
Hmm. So, your book, Purpose Mindset, social impact has become increasingly important to organizations and companies and their stakeholders. Can you give us a little Cliff's Notes on why that is? Why does it matter so much now?
So I think so a couple of things, right? I mean, the purpose journey in companies has been going on for a while. And people have wanted to kind of think beyond a mission vision to a purpose, which is really the why. Mission and vision is the what and the how. But why do we exist? Why are we here? Why does a company exist? Just to make money? Or how do we kind of think about the contribution that everybody leaves behind that goes beyond the personal to the collective? And to me, purpose is that ability to move from the me to the we. And that to me is important. And why it became important over the last 2.5 years is that, simply put, at least in our lifetimes, and the majority of the folks had never experienced something like this ever. It touched every single person.
Yeah.
Whether you have had COVID or not, you know somebody who's had COVID. You know somebody that has actually suffered from it. We all know that our way we interact with people has completely changed. How we do things has changed. So that suddenly got people to start saying, okay, what is my meaning? And can I discover meaning in my work? And the piece that I'm actually trying to articulate in the book, that unless you have discovered the meaning that you want from your life, you can't discover meaning in your work.
Yeah, I think that is really, really fascinating. So it is hard for some people to come up with their own meaning. Sometimes they feel more comfortable latching on to something else or some other meaning, but you're saying it's important. It's important to still find that within yourself.
Correct. And some of the work that we are doing is that we are helping organizations and companies and individuals to articulate their personal purpose statement and then see how that is getting aligned to whatever they do and where the alignments are.
Mm-hmm.
And our work shows that I actually don't believe that your personal purpose and your work should be fully aligned. Because if you're fully aligned, then you're just a robot. Because you exist beyond your work.
Yeah.
But there should be alignment. And if you are introspective enough to keep getting focused on your personal purpose and the company's purpose, then you will start building these connections. And over time, these connections will become stronger. And as the connections become stronger, then when there are challenges, when there are issues that will arise at work, then those bonds will not fray. But it's the same thing in life with our partner, with our kids. We create these connections. And in many ways, these connections get created because of the proximity in which we work, we live together, right? With your spouse, you're living together. With your kids, they're part of your DNA. So but that's not what is true with work. So how do you build those connections that allow you to then say, I am being fulfilled? Not always, not all the time. At the end of the day, it is work. Otherwise, why would you call it work? I mean, you go to work. But now you're able to fulfill it, and now you can actually see why that is important and why that work is important, and you have a much better sense of what you're doing. In my book, I say a barista in a coffee shop has a purpose. A bus driver will have a purpose. A custodian in a school has a purpose. A
Absolutely.
orderly in a hospital has a purpose, and a CEO in a company might not have a purpose. So it's not the job or your title. It is whether you yourself have made that choice. And that's what we're trying to get people to do, is to, you know, make that choice.
What what about your work with Microsoft and your research back? I mean, you talked to a lot of people at Microsoft to write this book. What about that has kind of informed your perspective on purpose? Why is purpose so important at Microsoft?
So as I mentioned, my wife joined Microsoft in 1993 when we were on the East Coast. And I would see this month of October, employees at Microsoft really get into action to do things in the community. And sitting on the East Coast, you kind of look and say, why are these people running around trying to help others in the world? What's going on? And when I came here in 98, I was able to see firsthand that energy.
Hmm.
And it always struck me that what was so unique about it. And when I joined the company, it always fascinated me when I was running it as to why so many people from so many different walks of life were willing to actually give their time, their acumen, their treasure, their time, talent, and treasure to things that mattered in the world beyond their work. So the book is exploring how did that happen. And the reason it happened is just two very simple things in my mind. One is Bill Gates' mother, Mary Gates, was just very committed into the community. And she ensured that her son, Bill, never forgot that and brought that into the company. And so did Bill's father, Bill Sr. And Bill Newcomb, who joined as the first chief legal officer for the company, he had this innate sense of understanding that here are these 20-something folks working 18 hours a day to change the world through technology. They will grow up here in this community. They will get married in this community. They will have kids in this community. They will live in this community. And we have to provide an opportunity for them to get connected. And the employee giving program and the employee volunteer program was that avenue of making these folks connected into their community so that they could go out and find something else to do in the community and make that connection. And Bill Gates understood the importance of that and agreed to allow for, at a very young time in a company, which was just, 1995, just 2,000 people. And so that we will actually match employees' financial contributions. And that then snowballed, which actually got people to become connected. And then the stories that I tell are employees who've kind of taken that and built on it. Some have left the company and dedicated their lives towards a different way of living, and others have continued to do it in different ways. Some have become extremely wealthy and are doing it because they have the resources, and others not. But it's that journey, and the most important principle to me was whatever you do, ensure you're connected to the community and the place that you live in.
Hmm.
And that then extends that self with the focus on the me to the we, which is the community. And we don't have to have a purpose statement to change the world. We can just have a way, something that you're going to do for yourself, your family, and your community.
How do you think that has impacted Microsoft as a business?
I mean, I think that it has actually made the company and its employees far more driven in the work that they do. There are so many employees that I've talked to who basically say, I stay in this company because of this opportunity. Yes, I understand that sometimes I might not be happy with my work, but this gives me that other energy that I need. And the fact that you can get 180,000 people, 200,000 people kind of to build that energy, that then comes back in spades to the company because people are working harder, people are enjoying what they're doing, they want to be in the company, they actually show up in the community in a far more effective way, which then makes Microsoft, I mean, it's then the ability to recruit, it's the ability to retain, it's the ability to, be much more productive.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit more about your specific role in that, in Microsoft's philanthropic efforts?
So
What
I
did you
ran
do?
Microsoft's corporate philanthropy for a decade. My role was to essentially say no, because we got requests from just about everybody asking us to support, and everybody is doing good work, right? And then the question is, how do we actually say no in a way that doesn't really make them feel diminished or their work is not worthwhile, but to kind of get people to understand, you know, our focus areas, our areas of interest, and then guide them to how they can actually get money from our employees and then get matched by the company, because that part of the program was open to every single nonprofit organization, regardless of their cause. So that became my challenge. That's, I mean, yes, I was, I signed, everybody who got grants, it was, I was signing the checks. But my role was to actually really educate the nonprofit, the social impact community, how to effectively partner with the company. And importantly, so get the company to understand how to partner effectively with the social sector. At the end of the day, a company brings four resources. It brings its acumen, which is its products, and that in itself has a value. It brings its people, which have their time, their talent, and their treasure. That is a set of values. A company has financial resources that it can bring. That has values. And then the company can also do advocacy and outreach around issues, and that has value. And in different times, you might actually be able to leverage different things from a company. So I kind of, so that's what I try and share with the social sector and the nonprofit community. Just don't go ask for money. See where the alignments are. Yes, money is important, but at times it might actually be, in Microsoft case, you might get 100 employees that might actually be willing to volunteer with you. And if their time is matched, then that, brings in resources.
Yeah.
And it opens doors. So it's really getting people to rethink how engagement looks like.
Do you think that there is such a thing as philanthropy done wrong?
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us what that would look like?
I mean,
what should people avoid, or what should companies keep in mind?
So, I mean, it's, as much as companies, individuals actually do, in this country, more money is given by individuals for philanthropic causes than by companies or foundations. 70% of all donations in this country is given by individuals. So $475 billion were raised last year. And to a large extent, individuals give because they are asked. But then you can get asked a lot all the time. So one or two things, right? First, nothing wrong with somebody asking you and you feel that I want to help, go help. But even in your small little environment, even with small amount of resources, create some thoughtful way of how you want to interact. What are the areas that you are interested in? What are a few kinds of topics and issues that you want to support? And then create a budget and put and say, this is what I'm going to spend. And then as your income grows, grow with it. Make sure you're checking the organizations that you're supporting, right? It's not that anybody is, I mean, there are organizations and there are people who actually raise money for fraudulent causes. Be cognizant of that. But at the end of the day, ensure that it's not just, oh, I'm giving something for cancer. But give something for cancer if that is important to you with an organization that might also be important to you. So those are the ways of kind of thinking about individually what you do. But philanthropy doing wrong is also when people just throw money around because somebody has an idea that, why is a rich individual suddenly thinking about, I know how education gets done, so I'm going to put my money around. I mean, we live in a democracy. We want to ensure that that is happening in a democratic process. So philanthropy can also start dictating things that might go in the wrong way by just a few select individuals or organizations that want to push for it. So one has to be very careful about, the role that we play and where those resources can become otherwise detrimental.
I'm trying to think, how do you convince or how do you guide someone or a company who is potentially has an agenda for their, maybe it's a political agenda for their philanthropy? What is the reason why they should not do it that way?
So again, I mean, I kind of feel that with a company, there will always be some agenda.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I actually, in some ways, say, there were companies that would be. I got interviewed at Microsoft all the time, and people will ask me, why are you supporting only computer-related education issues, which is what the company would support? Why are you not doing water, and why are you not doing AIDS? And I said, I don't know about these issues. Coca-Cola is probably the best company to deal with water because they use water. That is their core product. Medical companies should be focused on medical issues because they can not only bring in just the money, but they can actually bring in talent, know-how, acumen, employees that actually have some of that. And in our case, we were looking at technology education because it is important to bridge the digital divide. It is important to have access to the internet, to learn how to use technology. And we've seen how important it has become in this environment now. So that's where I would then guide companies and say, what is your core contributions you can make?
Yeah.
And then focus on that. Because that will also then get the employees to come in. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't do a few other things on the side. And so when from that perspective, Microsoft or other companies in the tech space will also then push for technology reform or expanding the visa because there is shortage of skilled workers in this country, and that's fine, right? But first, start out by making sure that you're making an impact on the ground. So even if you want somebody from a political spectrum to come and support you, they will actually see that you made a difference in their community because you brought in something. So to me, the important thing is to say, start with the impact you're going to make and then have the other things flow. But that's not always the case. In many cases, companies are driven by hey, I want to get a short-term results. I want to just give because I've been politically asked to donate to this cause, so I'm going to do it. And that's a learning journey. A lot of companies start from there. And as they evolve and grow, they become more mature and they shift their approach. And that's the work I do when I talk to companies and individuals and clients as to how to thoughtfully think about where your investments should go.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so you also talk about empathy and purpose being really important. Most leaders, I think, understand that empathy and having a sense of purpose are important, but really Microsoft built a culture where empathy and purpose thrive. So I guess what I'm wondering is when you talk to leaders of organizations, how do you help them move from that head knowledge that this is important to actually becoming an organization where those values are really central to their culture?
So, one of the companies that I've been working with is iCertis, ICERTIS. They're in the contract management space, right? So they're now 10-year-old. They got about 1,200 people. They work with Fortune 500 companies, even mid-sized companies, and helping take all of their contracts into a digital form and then make sense out of it, right? So, and that's an added value. And they had a mission and vision, and we actually worked with their executive leadership team to get everybody to craft a purpose statement. And then out of that, we created a purpose statement for the company, right? And at the end of the day, my challenge to all of them was to think, what do you do? What are you as a company? At the end of the day, contracts are the foundations of a democracy. Every single one of us has a contract with each other. If we didn't have that contract, there would be no democracy. So you are fundamentally the bedrock of democracy. So what are you doing? So you are actually building trust, because contracts allows you to build trust. You're strengthening bonds because that's where the connections become. And then you're helping create a better world. And now we are getting every single employee to live that purpose through their own purpose and the company's purpose. And so there is this piece which is, building trust, the piece around strengthening bonds, and there's making the world a better place. And making the world a better place is where they're getting employees engaged in community activities, giving, volunteerism. But purpose is not just about philanthropy. Purpose is about really how you live your life and how you change your mindset, where you are saying, I am moving from my individual focus to being far more engaged in the community writ large. And so that's the work we're doing with organizations. We're working with Starbucks and Microsoft and Avanade and large companies, big companies, universities. Deans of universities are actually bringing us in to actually craft purpose statements. We're working with students. So it is really that internal discovery that suddenly gets people to have an aha moment. And then they're better able to connect with what the company is doing. I'm actually not asking them to change any of their products. I'm not even asking them to go sell it in a different way. But I'm just kind of getting every single person to really understand the why you're doing this versus the how.
That kind of reminds me of something else that you talk about, which is helping people focus more on who they want to serve as opposed to who they want to be.
So, yeah, I mean, this is obviously a very interesting saying, but I actually kind of now start believing in it, right? I mean, I did this with my kids, right? I mean, we never asked our kids who you want to serve. We actually just said, who are you? What are you going to be? Are you going to be an engineer? Are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be a business guy? What are you going to be? And then we kind of box people into these buckets versus actually saying, what's your why? Who are you going to serve? And then if they say, this is how I want to be of service, then you can say, okay, you can be a doctor or you can be a nurse, right? Or you can be a biotech engineer. So we kind of get very quickly focused on the how. So for me, it is very important for us to recognize who we want to serve rather than who we want to be, if that makes sense.
Yes, certainly. I think it's another level of maturity that you're inviting people to move toward. What is the difference between doing things the right way versus doing the right thing?
So, we've kind of got caught up in this whole world of being efficient, do things the right way. But we really don't focus on the effectiveness of what we are doing. Are we actually doing the right thing? And I'll give you an example. In my book, I talk about Claire Devi. She used to be the CEO of Sight Life, which is a cornea transplant organization. And when she came in from Microsoft, she kind of went into the efficiency mode and said, okay, let me just do the return on investments, how efficient we are when what we are doing. We are a small nonprofit, we are resource strapped, we've got to be very efficient. And she quickly realized that if she went down the route, she will actually lose her people. Because she was actually trying to see, can we be efficient with the cost of each cornea transplant? And then she kind of started rethinking about the effectiveness of their work, and then found that in the US, they had highly trained surgeons. But these surgeons are never connected to anybody in the developing world, in India or Africa or in other places where they also do these transplants. And she now then said, I'm going to give you time off to actually go mentor another surgeon in some of these resource strapped places. And in doing so, she increased the purpose of these individuals in the West, but then cut the cost down from $640 a transplant to $136.
That's significant.
Right? Because people became much more trained and qualified, but just going down and saying cost cutting, efficiency would have just lost the reason they exist.
Yeah.
So it's keeping that in mind. Right? Am I doing the right thing? Right? Or am I just focused on doing things the right way?
So you've worked with not just companies, but also governments and government agencies around the world on this topic of having a purpose mindset. If you were to have the opportunity to work with elected officials in the United States, where there's such a big divide between the left and the right now, especially, how would you help bridge that divide? How would purpose help bridge that divide?
So let's just for a second imagine that you actually had all of our elected officials with a crafted purpose statement. And they were actually working together around their purpose. Then whether you're a right or a left actually becomes meaningless. So how do you kind of get to that? And what happens is that where collaboration takes place, and it is taking place, right? We are not kind of dysfunctional.
Right.
I mean, things are getting done, bills are getting passed, people are actually working in a collaborative fashion. The collaboration is coming around the how. Okay, let me not worry about you. I mean, dislike you, but we both agree that we need to pass this bill around healthcare or medicines or whatever. And we'll only talk about that. But if actually people knew the whys, leave aside the party politics, now there is a whole different way in which you would communicate. And that now actually increases the humanity connections versus the political affiliations. And I think that's what we've lost.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think that's what can be built back by creating bridging networks rather than bonding networks. We're bonding networks, we are actually, we are happy to birds of a feather flock together. So we kind of become more and more myopic. And with social media, actually, that becomes even, we have the less ability to even then now listen to anything else. But if you actually step out and say we are actually going to create bridging networks where we will bridge across these divides and across these chasms, and our purpose are going to be what will drive us, you might actually see a whole different way in which we communicate and interact with people.
Yeah, really good. Okay, so I want to ask you where people can find you in your book, but I also have one more question after that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So first, where can people find you, Dr. Badshah, in your book? In your
I
books?
mean, the book
You have
is,
multiple books. And your
get
art.
it on Amazon. You can go get it on Amazon. It's a Kindle, it's a hard copy, it's an Audible. So you can get it anywhere. You go to your local bookstore, order it from there. I mean, so the book is easy to get, kind of. I mean, it's a book. I'm on LinkedIn, Akhtar Badshah, search me, connect with me. We have a website, which is purpose-mindset.org. Join the community there. We have a lot of people that we engage with. So, happy to connect. And, if you are looking, or send me, my email is there on my LinkedIn. So just reach out, connect.
Great. Okay, my last question for you. What last piece of advice would you want to give to somebody who would like to have a voice of influence?
So every voice is a voice of influence. To me, influence only comes when you are willing to use it. Use your voice. For me, purpose is a light switch. Turn it on. If you turn it on, you will light up. Then you don't have to worry about darkness. So influence comes only when you are willing to use your voice. And every single individual, a young child to an elderly person, they all have a voice. So influence only comes from that. So I would say use your voice. We are all empowered to use our voice. And our voice can be used in multiple ways. It's not just speaking. So that's how I would actually get people to say, every single one of us has been given this ability with a mind to be deeply engaged in our community. To do that, it could just be by smiling at a neighbor. That's a voice. You're sending a signal of gratitude, of appreciation, of acceptance.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your voice of influence with our listeners today, Dr. Badshah. We appreciate it, and encourage people to go get that book, Purpose Mindset. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. I so greatly appreciate it. Thank you.